From a Canadian point of view, Canada has 200 personnel in Ukraine under Operation Unifier. It's a training mission. The Prime Minister spoke to the Ukrainian president last week about extending that mission, but should Canada do more? Ship weapons to help Ukraine defend itself? Let's find out. Joining me now, Peter MacKay, the former Defence and Foreign Affairs Minister under Stephen Harper. He now works as a strategic advisor for Deloitte Canada. Also, Dick Fadden, the former CSIS Director, the former Deputy Minister for National Defence, and the former National Security Advisor to both Stephen Harper and Justin Trudeau. And we've got the retired General Tom Lawson, the former Chief of the Defence Staff, the highest ranking military member in Canada. Gentlemen, first of all, great to see you all, and you know each other well. I'm going to start with you, Peter MacKay, from the perspective of the Canadian government and our NATO allies. Should Canada be doing more than just sanctions, which they're talking about?
Well, we are doing more than sanctions. Going back to 2014, as you mentioned off the top, Evan, we've got troops there, albeit to train, about 120 plus staff. And we have previously given defensive support. So road clearance, winter protection, communications. We've done everything but send actual military procured weaponry, which I think is something Ukraine is looking for. Should we be doing more? I'd say the first thing, Minister Anand, with her mandate letter in hand, should go to Cabinet and say, we are going to renew and continue for the foreseeable future to support Mission Unifier. Get that done. Then leaning forward, I would suggest that there is more that can be done diplomatically. Canada has been a bit absent from the discussion. President Biden has been making the rounds and calling countries looking for their support. We haven't been part of those discussions. And I would suggest that the thing that Russia fears the most, that Putin doesn't want to see, is not a inclusion in NATO, but it's a resilient, independent, sovereign, corruption-free Ukraine.
Dick, you're the former national security advisor. People are trying to figure out what does Vladimir Putin really want? What's his goal here? Is it to invade? And so what advice, if you were national security advisor, would you be giving the Prime Minister?
First, I would say that his objective is control, but not sovereign control. And I think that harks back to the days when the Soviet Union controlled without owning a bunch of countries in Eastern Europe. I don't think he wants to invade Ukraine and take it over. I agree with Peter. There are a bunch of things that we can do there, but we cannot do anything that's going to be very effective alone. So I entirely agree with Peter. We should be out there beating the bushes with our allies, arguing, maybe send some more troops on a rotational basis, make sure that sanctions that are now in place are fully respected.
General Lawson, weigh in on that, where you think this is going. And actually, if Canada even has the capacity now to start increasing its presence.
Yeah, I'll add to what Peter MacKay said. Actually, we've had up to 1,000 Canadians also in Eastern European countries as part of Operation Assurance, which has been the largest ongoing Canadian operation since it went in under my orders back in 2015 under the Conservative government, and has been repeated all the way up. We've got a battle group in Latvia leading part of NATO's confidence maneuvers to let the Eastern European members of NATO know that they're there and standing up against whatever the Russians might do. But I would agree as well with Dick. I don't think Putin is seeking an invasion, even a mini invasion. Sending soldiers in Russian uniforms across the Ukraine border really changes the dynamics in a way I don't think he's looking for. I think what he's doing is in a nation that I think we should respect as a fading power. We really should be focused on China and other nations growing and becoming powerhouses that Russia's receding, and I think Putin knows that.
Yeah, but of course that could make him more dangerous if a fading power needs to be reactive. There is one stick that's been out there. Should NATO say, look, let's agree to keep Ukraine neutral? Maybe that's it. They don't join NATO. Should that be on the table, Peter MacKay?
I don't think there is any likelihood that Ukraine is going to join NATO in the foreseeable future. They've been asking for membership action for a long time. Obviously, they are looking for more weaponry from Western countries, but also sanctions. I think there is a bigger role for Canada to play in the world of diplomacy, and that is calling out Vladimir Putin for this premise that somehow NATO is threatening them, whether it's on the former Soviet Union borders, or whether it's pushing back that NATO has done in the past through training missions in places like Ukraine, but also in other neighboring countries. And so we need to sort of expose that for the lie that it is, and at the same time get into some kind of a serious negotiation to de-escalate.
Yeah, Dick, weigh in on that. Go
well,
for
you
it.
know, Evan, well, I was going to say, both the point that Peter's just made and the one that Tom made earlier, I think points to the need for Canada to have a foreign policy or national security policy. I slightly disagree with Tom in the sense that we have to focus almost exclusively on China. I argued on your program some years ago that we should not ignore Putin and Russia because it has the potential for causing a great deal of problems in Europe. I mean, the Baltic states and Poland and others are scared witless, if you'll forgive my use of the word, about what they could possibly do. China is a long ways away by comparison. We need a foreign policy that's holistic and comprehensive so that we can allocate the military, diplomatic, and economic tools that Peter's talking about.
Tom Lawson, last thing to you, General Lawson, and it's military capacity. You talk about China, right now we've got some capacity crisis within the military itself, just in terms of the men and women and the tools. Does that limit Canada's ability to respond, to provide weapons to Ukraine, in your view?
Well, I don't know about providing weapons to the Ukraine. That's going to be a NATO decision, and one that brings the Prime Minister and Cabinet in. But as for Canada's military capabilities, I mean, we are kind of the seventh most powerful, influential nation in NATO, and we've got a history of responding when NATO asks, and this has NATO's attention. So there are all kinds of things that Canada can do, positioning troops closer to the border in Ukraine. And Canada has the third largest collection of people with Ukrainian background in the world. Number one, Ukraine, number two, Russia, and then number three, Canada, 1.5 million Canadians. So this is very, very key for a key Canadian issue and a key NATO issue and a very important issue for the world.
Retired General Lawson, Dick Fadden, and Peter MacKay. Gents, I really appreciate you. It's an evolving situation with lots of implications, but thanks for giving us some perspective this morning. Appreciate it.